Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, today we have a very special treat for you. We not only have an amazing topic and two fantastic guests, but we also have another co-host today, and that is our good friend, Alan Peterson, the Executive Director of the Compassionate Friends. Hi, Alan.
Hey,
How
Alan.
are you, ladies? I am honored to be your third wheel, your wingman, whatever it is you need today.
The wind beneath our wings, Alan.
The wind beneath your wings. I will start blowing right now.
We love it. We love it when you co-host.
Well, we have good energy together in the webinars and television programs that we do, but our guests truly make the program.
They do.
Because their stories are real, and there's so much good that comes out of it. So I'm just glad to be here and work with both of you as always.
And
So
we're
thanks.
also happy that we can bring you this show from the Open to Hope Foundation in partnership with the Compassionate Friends. Well, Heidi, our topic today, I've really been interested over time in how our past experiences impact and inform our grief. Because people grieve differently depending on their experiences and what has happened to them and personality types and all sorts of things. So we've got a couple of people today who have had a loss. Both of them have lost a child, and strangely enough, both of them lost children around the same age and in similar situations where they fell and died as a result of a fall.
Wow.
So, and with teenage sons. So, Heidi, you want to introduce our guests?
Sure, we're going to talk to two people today, Mom. Richard Wood and Dr. Nisha Zenoff. And you know Richard.
He's in my Burlingame chapter of Compassionate Friends.
Yep, you know him through the Compassionate Friends. And Dr. Nisha Zenoff is a psychotherapist and a grief counselor. And she wrote a book called The Unspeakable Loss: How Do You Live After a Child Dies? And that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today.
Yep. And the book is amazing. Well, Richard, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
Welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
And Nisha, welcome to you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Well, Richard, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your son, Spencer.
Spencer was 22 in July of 2006. He was going to school in San Luis Obispo, and he was out at Avila Beach, which is right out in the ocean. And he had been out with his friends. He'd had one of the greatest days of his life. Late that evening, he had missed a ride back into town, so he's walking over to a friend's house. And Avila Beach is like a small hamlet. There are no street lights. That night there was no marine, it was a marine layer, so there was no sunlight, so he was walking in darkness. He literally missed where he was supposed to turn and tripped and fell down a small embankment, which normally, they even reenacted it 3 times because they couldn't accept that someone died. But he fell down the bottom and there was a concrete drainage ditch, and he hit his head just exactly in the wrong place and had a subdural hematoma.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So sorry. Nisha, why don't you tell us about your son also?
My son Victor died in 1980, and he was, a week before he was 18, he was hiking in Yosemite, and he was running in the switchback on Lower Yosemite Falls, and he tripped and he fell 700 feet.
Wow.
And I know you chronicle some of that in your fabulous book, and your book is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
It's a really amazing book, and we're going to talk a little bit about your book a little more in a minute, but one of the things that I was interested in both of you is, Richard, you were telling me that you had been in a 12-step program prior to Spencer's death, and I know from being in a Compassionate Friends chapter with you that you're very, I want to say, wise, and there are a lot of things that I think come up that remind me of some of the 12-step things. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you felt like it impacted it, and then I want to come to you and talk to you about being a therapist prior to your son's death, because I was also, and I think there are a whole bunch of issues. So the idea is, how does your past life impact you? And you might, the audience might want to be thinking about themselves and their past life. So talk a little bit about yours, Richard, and about the things you learned and have learned.
The 12-step program is a program of recovery, and just like in Compassionate Friends, when we lose a child, the commonalities are you begin at a point of utter desperation. And through the 12-step program, what I like to call is you release the you release the chains off of your heart. And by getting those chains off of your heart, you're able to get to a point where you know, you get to gratitude, you get to hope, and it's an amazing process. I think many people, in fact, most people in the whole world could work the 12-step program to benefit themselves.
I like that gratitude, Heidi, because we know something about that, don't we?
Absolutely. It is the fastest way to shift your energy and to feel better. And it is hard to find gratitude initially, but if you can just find it in small ways.
Yeah, so the gratitude's a big
But I agree with Richard when he says anyone can benefit from 12-step. I mean, the idea of knowing what we can control in life is so key, and there's so many things in 12-step that are just, that can be applied anywhere.
What I like to say, what I've come up with through my journey, is that I call grief the golden yardstick of love, because nowhere else in our lives are we ever confronted with measuring the massive depths and the beauty and just the whole enormity of our love for our children especially, but for anyone. And through that process, I call it the golden yardstick of love, because when you to begin the journey of hope, the golden component is when we're able to begin measuring the love of our children back to us. Because love is the most powerful energy in the world. It does not die. It's there. Our children's love for us is there. And when you can begin measuring that hope from them coming to you, you begin that process of getting towards hope. Because for so many people in our program, you don't even want to say the word hope when it's their first time at a meeting.
Right.
Because they will get so angry. But anger is one of those things, that's one of those chains on your heart. And you've got to get those chains off of your heart. And when you do that, you get to a certain component where you begin to see things and feel things better. As a friend of mine once said to me, to feel the love of your child, how do I do that? And how do we do that? Think of love as air. Love is everywhere. It's all around us. We can't see it, but we breathe it, and we breathe it with our lungs, and our lungs wrap our heart. So if you think of your child's love as air, close your eyes, take in that breath. That's my child's love. Let it out. Do that 4 or 5 times. You feel their love. Something happens, and that is hope, and that is that feeling.
Now, do you feel that your 12-step program helped you to cope with the loss?
Absolutely. It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm not a proponent of it, but it's that, again, it's getting those chains off your heart so you can get that spiritual connection, whether it's with your higher power or with your child, but to get that connection back. For me, my journey when Spence died, we had multiple services for him because of geography down in Newport Beach and Kansas City and so forth. And I was amazed how much and how strong my spiritual connection was immediately. I mean, I don't mean to sound so religious, but I felt God's arms wrap around me and wrap around our family.
Now, did you have to struggle with feeling that God spirit way back? So you recognized that when Spence died? Did you have other losses that caused you to, or other struggles, or do you think it just came to you then?
Nothing is, as profound as the loss of Spence. In the following years, I lost both my parents, and you can't compare that. But as a child, I've always had religion in my life. I think it kind of went away, like most people, as they get to college and so forth. But it was always there. But I was amazed, partly because of the spiritual work we do in the 12-step program, that it was right there for me. And and so many times in this program, we talk to people and they'll say, I'm so, if they want to talk about God at all, they're very angry. And I like to say, well, you know what God says? Welcome to the party. I have very big shoulders. I can listen. Let's begin the conversation.
Yeah. So leaning on a power bigger than yourself was an important part of the healing process. And for you, it was God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And knowing you're not alone in it, because there is an entity bigger than yourself walking with you in this journey.
I will tell you, obviously between us, we've met tens of thousands of bereaved parents, grandparents, and siblings. And I've had other people tell me that the experience of a 12-step program had helped them as well. And because you think about it as we go through grief, early on you can't think about hope. But like you say, you can lean on hope. Maybe you can even have hope that there is hope. But there are some similarities to that. And I think when we try to put grief in these little stages, and it just doesn't apply. So I think it is very applicable. I really do. And I will tell you that people, say, well, when you lose a child in your family or whatever, that a lot of people lose their relationship with God or with their faith. But I'll tell you what, I've met many, many people who found their connection going through this process.
Or who are willing to get back to it.
Absolutely.
I always say to people, don't be afraid to go back and look at the religion of your childhood or whatever. Nisha, I wanted to ask you, now, when my son was killed, I was a therapist. And talk about that. Was that, is your past life as a therapist, how did that change? Was it easier to have a loss because you had all this information, or?
No. Even though I was already a grief therapist and a psychotherapist for years, when Victor died, I found nothing that I knew intellectually about psychology or working with other people helped me with my excruciating pain and grief. And I made a vow at that time that if I could understand how parents survive the death of a child, because literally I did not think I could survive. How does one live after a child dies? It's impossible. And I promised that I would help find the answer and then help spread it to other people. But we hadn't met before tonight. And just talking about the 12 steps, I want to just bring in that I'm also part of the 12-step community. And what Heidi said earlier about gratitude. And people say, well, how do you live after a child dies? And I say, one step at a time, one day at a time, sometimes 15 minutes at a time or 5 minutes at a time. And certainly the serenity prayer, which most of us know or are familiar with it, helped when Victor died. And at that time I was not in the 12-step community, but I knew the serenity prayer. And at that time I would say
the serenity prayer for those who don't know.
You want to say it together?
Sure.
Okay. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, it's powerful.
And it's powerful, and it's non-denominational, and God can be the God of your choosing. It can be a fish, it can be a golf club, it can be anything that has some meaning to you. And the other thing that you said that was so touching when you talked about the golden yardstick, I always love to say that love is the only thing that I have ever found that makes the unbearable bearable. And it can be the love from your child, which never dies. My love for my child has never died, and Victor, it'll be 37 years. I love him as if it were yesterday. And so love definitely is what helps heal.
This is what I love about doing all the programs that we do together, is because you meet so many different people who different things work for them, but there is a commonality to that. And I love your thing about the yardstick, and the thing about love too. And I think no matter for those watching where you are in grief, if you keep working and processing it, and even if you look for a gratitude for just that memory that you have, you do move forward. The process does move forward for you, and the love is still there. And I think sometimes people who are deep in grief are afraid to let go of, like you say, that chain of that pain or anger, because they're afraid if they let go of a little of that pain, they're going to somehow let go of some of the love. And it takes some time working this to understand that you can let go of the pain without letting go of an ounce of the love. But that takes time, and it takes being around people who understand the loss. But I love both of your perspectives. They're very insightful.
I wanted to hit on one word that I heard, and which was anger.
Yeah.
And, that is, I don't know if it's particularly guys, too. Do you think that guys are more angry, or?
I didn't experience it. My wife did. And everybody, as you said earlier, the journeys begin like two lines in outer space, your life and that child's life. And when those points cross, that's the beginning of your grief journey. And I don't know, because I had to deal with everything with Spencer and the way it happened, I didn't get caught up in anger. And a lot of people can, and you have to work through it. You can have resentments, guilt, blame.
Shame.
Shame.
Shame because you should have taken care of your child.
So many people would say to me, Rich, how can you, would they understand Spencer's story, how can you feel responsible? I said, because I'm his dad.
Right.
And our
That's it.
responsibility is to keep them alive.
Right.
Exactly right.
And keep them
Absolutely.
safe.
And keep
Yeah.
them safe.
Yeah.
Drive safely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And the last words Victor said to me when I said, honey, be careful, is what we instinctively say to our children. And he said, go hiking up to Yosemite. Okay, Mom, don't worry. I don't want to die.
Wow.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I was plenty angry. I felt angry. I was also going through a divorce 2 years later. So I had a double set of grieving going on. But I thought, who or where in the world can hold my enormous anger? I was angry at God. And so I would go to the ocean and I would go to the mountains because I felt nature could hold my level of pain and grief and anger. And in the ocean, I would yell and scream, and I would get a sore throat, but I'd feel better.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a parent whose child has died that doesn't feel some guilt.
Well, I remember when, and my mom knows this story, and I have not told it very much. After my brother died, and you know he died in a car accident with my cousin, and in Washington D.C. My mom wasn't with them, and my cousin was driving, but she called me on the phone to talk to me right after I'd found out, and she was crying really bad, and she apologized. And I've never lost a child. I've lost a brother. I didn't understand that. I said, but Mom, you weren't there. She said, I know, but I should have kept him safe. So it was interesting from, like, not understanding that. Now I'm a parent, so now I do understand it.
But Heidi, you're talking about sibling grief
right.
at the Compassion for Friends Conference. Help me, after all these years, understand more deeply my two surviving children. And I really went back and apologized to them.
Wow.
And one thing you said, I don't remember if it was you or Gloria in the conference, when you said, you can say, I've lost a child, but I've never lost a sibling.
Right.
And that was so important to hear.
Yeah, because they're different kinds of losses. But they're both very profound and powerful. And sometimes as siblings, we don't feel like we have the right to our grief because we've been told that yours is the worst loss that you can ever have. So sometimes we kind of are quiet and don't say that much about ours because society is whispering in our ear, your parents have been through a lot, don't cause them any more pain.
You know, there's one thing I just would love to bring up. I was mentioning it quickly earlier, is that I just got an email talking about the Pearl Harbor in 1941.
Yeah.
And it talked about a young man who died, and then it said in the article that his mother, who of course was never the same, quote, after the child died, and 2 years later the mother died, and it said, her grief took her to her grave.
Wow.
And I was reading it, and I started to cry, because I thought, we don't have to go to our graves now when our children die, because we have compassionate friends.
Right.
We know we're not alone. We have Open to Hope. We don't have to walk alone. We have a community. We have other people, and we can talk about our grief with each other, and our love, and our hope. It's a different time.
Yeah.
And I felt so grateful, again, for living in this time now, where we're miracles. Look at all of us.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
I always stress, and I'm like a broken record if you watch the shows we do, but you know, I do a lot of interviews and reporters want to know the simple answer to how do you get through a loss like this. And I tell people, one is educate yourself about grief. Just what you two said here today, I wished I could have heard that when Ashley first died. I wish I could have heard what you said in the first 5 minutes of the show. But to educate yourself, to understand the grief process, because it is mental and physical and emotional and spiritual, but to have support. And if you understand the process a little bit, and if you have that support, and so that you understand that when you take that step back, you're not doing something wrong or you're not crazy, it's crucial. And Gloria always says, there can be post-traumatic growth. We see it all of the time. And there was a time, not that many years ago, we were, you know, using the word hope or finding joy again was almost like we need to be careful.
Right.
But you can find joy again. You can find a quality of life again. You can find a life of great purpose and a deep meaning. And we see that every day, and you see that every day.
I do. In my interviews in my book, I interviewed 72 bereaved parents, grandparents, siblings. It is amazing to hear how they've taken their grief and turned it into action, and how they have given themselves permission to love and be compassionate with other people. I mean, I remember you saying about all the scholarships that you give out.
Wow.
So Richard, you give scholarships out in your son's name?
Yeah, we've given out 34 scholarships down at San Luis Obispo in his name.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's incredible.
We've had 10 memorial concerts.
Oh, I love
And,
it.
you know, I'm really very close to many of his friends still. This last year I've been to 3 weddings of his college friends.
Wow.
I got a phone call this week from one of his female best friends, and she said, this is my second phone call to let, I told my parents that I'm expecting a baby and you're the next call.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then she said, and guess what the due date is?
What?
She said, you know, July 22nd. That's the day Spencer died. But,
Wow, my
Wow,
goodness.
that's amazing.
but for us,
It is.
that wasn't sad. That was
Yeah.
just, it's just
Right.
like one more
Well, and
element.
a life is coming into the world.
Absolutely, yeah. on his day,
And
yeah.
Spencer was full of life.
Absolutely.
It sounds like both your children were. I mean, they were very active and they engaged in life fully.
Yeah. I'd like to take this time, if I can, to thank you two both, and also Alan, but what you all do is amazing.
Oh, well,
It is.
thank you.
It is. It really is.
You know, it's interesting because it's been so many, Scott died in 1983, and people are sometimes, you know, I'm sure they wonder, you know, what are you still doing in this
Yes.
field? But it is such a wonderful area to be in because post-traumatic growth, it is so wonderful to see people go from, you know, really the depths of sorrow and see them come and do service, and it's just amazing, isn't it, Heidi?
It is. I mean, people do say, how sad, how can you do that? And I said, it's the opposite of sad. To meet people at their darkest moments and to walk with them out back into the light is the most rewarding and incredible thing you can ever do.
It saves lives.
Yeah.
It's not about death, it's about living.
Absolutely.
And about love.
And honoring our loved ones through living our best life.
I like to say it's a gift from Spencer to me to help other people, because it's what he would want me to do.
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
I just, when I think of the Compassionate Friends, and as the executive director today, it's a great honor to be in that position. But I remember walking through that door the very first time a couple months after Ashley died, and when I think of our organization, I really think of it like we come walking in when everybody else is kind of walking out. Those friends that can't handle it, and family that can't handle it, people that are trying to make you, you know, push you to be better than you are. We walk in and we don't try to fix you, we validate you. You said something that's just so key, and I wish everybody understood it, but you were talking about all your training as a therapist and a counselor. You know, people think we can intellectualize this loss, or some people think we can just spiritualize this loss, but we have to grieve this loss. And if more people, because we spend a lot of time, I think, in grief, trying to read every book or learn everything, but it's something you have to feel your way through and breathe your way through.
You're so
Well,
right.
Alan, that's a great thing to close on, and we want to thank you guys for being on the show. It's amazing. Are you going to sing
Thank
something
you.
for us,
A
Alan?
very request to sing a song, and I am going to do this song specifically for you.
What
So-
did I
Ah,
so
tonight I
much.
light this
Tonight-
candle.
tonight I hold this
Alan's
candle.
gonna
Thank
sing
you
it.
so
All right,
much.
Absolutely.
Alan. Well, again, thank you guys for being on the
Thank
show
you.
Thank you
and for
very
all the
much,
things
both
that
of
you
you.
do to help the people that are bereaved and make the world a better place.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you
thanks
so
everybody
much.
for watching this show today. And Heidi and I always remind you, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless. God bless.
Tonight I hold this candle in memory of you, hoping some way, somehow, my love will shine through. I close my eyes, lost in the glow. There are so many things that I want you to know. This candle says I love you. This candle says I miss you. This candle is saying that I remember you. When I'm holding it toward heaven, it feels like you are near. If you're looking down tonight and see this candle burning bright, it says I'm wishing you were here. In the glow of this candle, I can almost see your smile, and it carries me away for a little while to another time, another place, when all it took to light up my world was your beautiful face. This candle says I love you. This candle says I miss you. This candle is saying that I remember you. When I'm holding it toward heaven, it feels like you are near. If you're looking down tonight and see this candle burning bright, it says I'm wishing you were here. Well, someday, some way, I'll see you again, and I'll hold you in my heart. Until then, this candle says I love you. This candle says I miss you. This candle is saying that I remember you.